the last thing you should ask ChatGPT is say, like, hey, look at our entire conversation I just had with you, and please build me a prompt. You could either save that, or you could put it as a prompt inside of a project or a GPT.
A prompt inside of a prompt inside of a prompt. It's promptception.
But what's great is that was a good joke.
Yeah. Appreciate it. I didn't think it was good at all, so I'm glad you liked it.
No, it's a good joke because it's like, it's kitsch, whatever.
Welcome to the show, where air takes the flow. Leah Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dixon, and as always, I'm joined by the breaker of the GPT chains, Rich Swire. Game of Thrones reference, like...
That's right, break her chains, right?
Yeah, exactly. How many years after the fact?
What was her name again?
Mother of Dragons?
Mother of Dragons. So
yeah, Mother of Dragons, breaker of chains.
I'll take Mother of Dragons too. You can call me Mother of Dragons, breaker chains.
Yeah, it's 2025.
I don't know why you held out.
Nah, it didn't flow into what we're talking about today, right? So we're gonna dive really quickly here into taking these GPT prompts to full agentic, agents that are ready to rock and roll, and scaling AI beyond just the simple prompts that we've all come to kind of know and love. So let's jump right into it, Rich.
Yep. Yeah, I think what's more common than not in the last few months is every time we're now talking to people who are obviously experimenting with AI within their business are starting with the tool sets, right? The tools that are obviously on everybody's desktop now, right? ChatGPT being kind of the leading tool, but even Gemini and other tools that are very similar, we get the same kind of dialogue that starts to happen, which starts something like, hey, I've been using ChatGPT and I've been building out my prompt, or a series of prompts to do, X, Y, Z for my business. I'm putting this document in and I've got a long prompt that I've kind of created and curated. And in some cases, if they're somewhat astute, they've also made it into a GPT, right? Which is basically just a prompt plus maybe some documents that is kind of shareable, right? Within the GPT universe. And that's a very powerful component of what ChatGPT allows you to do, which is kind of get pretty close to creating a repeatable process, right? So if this is something that you're going to do on a day-to-day basis, updating your prompt or having to retype your prompt over and over and over is kind of a pain in the butt. So being able to kind of store it and then make it a GPT is like the first step on toward what would basically be automation, right? Working with your AI to execute a task.
It's where the magic of the process kind of lives.
Right.
Yep.
And so what's great about that is when we think about building out an agentic solution, an AI agent, that's kind of the first step. In some cases, it makes a natural crossover to where you would want to kind of untether it or unleash it from your desktop and make it autonomous, right? Put it out there in the wild. So, or take advantage of some of the more powerful components of an agentic framework or an agentic platform that go beyond kind of the limitations of a GPT or a prompt. Some examples of that for people who've used prompts, they're probably very frustrated about the fact that it can only go so deep in the conversation, right? It starts to kind of truncate after X number of kind of back and forth prompts.
A little bit of a one-trick pony as far as that's why people have multiple specialized.
Yeah, it just runs
prompts.
out of memory, right? It just doesn't remember the 20th thing you said. But the problem is that context window basically gets filled up, right? So it's like a glass of water. The problem is that the most important water that you poured into that glass was the beginning. So the minute it gets chunked off, it starts to lose, I don't know what we're talking about anymore. And it starts to hallucinate. The other limitation is that, you can only upload so many documents, right? You can't pump in, I think it's like 10 or 20 is kind of the limit of what the typical GPT would allow for, or even the project within a ChatGPT experience. So
yeah, and even if that scales up, it's not where a business is really, they're not giving 10 documents or 20 documents or even 50. They're going so much deeper than that.
Sure. Yeah. So, but within the ChatGPT environment, you can kind of get pretty close to what would be what I would call kind of the playground or the sandbox of building out something that feels agentic. And the only reason why it feels agentic is because it's static, it's there, and you can always go back to it and ask it questions as if it was there yesterday. And you're not starting from scratch every time you open up a new conversation or a new thread inside of ChatGPT and start talking to it, because then you have to go, oh, hey, I'm here again to talk about this again. Okay, great. So there's some persistence there. But it definitely has its limits, right? So if anybody's out there kind of building these GPTs or building those like what I'd call mega prompts or a series of prompts that might be, kind of formulated into kind of a consistent way or consistent manner, then you're kind of primed or prepped to kind of take that and evolve it into what I would call an agent. And really the difference between kind of a sophisticated prompt and or a GPT and an agent would be, and we've talked about this in many, many episodes, but for those who are new to the pod, you would basically, it's so funny saying that. So it's like a first time listener or was it long time listener, first time caller?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah. So, when you talk about transforming that into an agent, you still have, so to draw parallels, you still have that instructional prompt, right? That large prompt that is kind of driving the agent. In the agentic world, that still remains the same. It's the system prompt, the instructions that you give the agent, right? If you're uploading documents for that agent to, obviously access and build onto that prompt, you're kind of graduating from what I would call files, just files that are being uploaded as part of a thread to what's called a vector store, which is like more of a database where you can import all of those files into the vector database, and that gives you more scale. So now the vector database can hold 10,000 files. So you're not limited
more
by
structure
anymore.
around what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and the other thing that agent solves is it no longer has that memory problem, right? So you can actually scale the memory and you can contain that memory so that you're not worried about it getting truncated and so forth. So you kind of solve some of the bigger issues. Most people hit that brick wall pretty fast if they're doing any sort of sophisticated prompting. But it is a great way to kind of learn and understand how to guide an AI to do what you want it to do. It's also a great way to see how far it can go, right? Like we get a lot of use cases that come to us to say, hey, I want to do financial analysis, or I want to generate contracts, or I want to review contracts, or I want to do, complicated analysis on a series of documents, so that you want to push AI and see how well it does. But if it does really well and you're like, wow, this is actually pretty good. What most people think is, okay, how do I now take it from here? Like take it from only me using it within the point of view of a tool, and how do I agentify it and make it available to everybody within my company in a secure and compliant way, right? And that's obviously where our product comes into play with Rhea. And we saw the same thing is like, if you really want to create AI agents at scale and you want to take those prompts, you want to take those GPTs and put them to use, you have to kind of untether it from the desktop, put it out there, wrap it with security and compliance, make sure that you have all the access controls in play, make sure it can scale and be enterprise hardened. But then it works exactly like how you want it to work. People talk to it, it's been trained, and it does the task that you originally kind of set out to do. So I thought it was a really cool, conceptually a way to talk about how do you start as like kind of like what it's kind of like a hobbyist, it's no different than that. If you actually look at a lot of technology, it's kind of like starting with, if you're a website developer back in the day and you were kind of playing around with HTML or kind of playing around with WordPress or whatever, and then you kind of start to understand like the limitations and you start to go, okay, I need to kind of scale this up, and eventually you're in a content management system and you're doing it at scale and multiple people are contributing to the website, but you might do like a little skunk works. So it's a great way for anybody out there right now, if you work at a company and you're thinking about bringing AI into your company. And although it's not it's not the most like, obviously you have to make sure you meet all your security and compliance and don't, cross hairs with legal. But, if you start using ChatGPT even at home and start playing around with, just different concepts without obviously divulging anything proprietary, but just kind of experimenting, right, with test data, see what you can do. And if you can actually achieve something that you can go, wow, this actually would save me hours of work. That's the trigger point where you say, all right, I need to figure out a way to get this and make an agent. I need to make sure I got to take it up to my IT department, my legal, or talk to my boss or whatever, and get this thing rocking, because that's exactly how you build out an agentic workforce, is starting with the simple stuff and making it really work for you.
Absolutely. I think the spark that comes from a business user, somebody in the company that is starting to wonder what they could do to improve on their job. Like we've said a handful of times, that's not something you've had the ability to do with software in the scale that AI brings, right? Like buying more software means I now have to get really proficient with that software before I see the time gap. And AI, to a degree feels like magic because you've created a GPT prompt that kind of reflects specifically what you are trying to accomplish. But I do think that one of the problems that a lot of users run into is that then they say, hey, check out this prompt that I did. And now you might be engaging with that thread that you've now created differently than I would. So the standardization, kind of like you said, creating a structured workflow, now that you've added rules and added context to it, it can be repeatable, even if it's not integrated into the business or, becomes super useful in the organization. It is something that feels like it's more of a standalone collaborator on the team. So, we've talked a little bit about the prompting and what creates that spark. Structured workflows brings some of this up to adding guardrails, persona training. It's not living in your stack yet, but it's there. Where do you feel is really that I've now broken this and now I have this PhD level brain in a toddler body? Like, does that come at integration really, where now it says, what products do I need to use for our company to execute my job role? Or, I think that's probably the next step that is where most people drop off and where they feel comfortable talking about AI.
Yeah, I mean, the to your point, the cool thing about the on-ramp here is, you notice we're not talking about technical people or IT or anything like that.
No.
We're talking about anybody and everybody
Right.
is now this kind of new, this kind of new reincarnation of a developer. Yeah, creator, a builder, right? But like any other builder, it's very much more art than science in the beginning, right? You're just kind of manipulating the prompt. It's almost like you're talking to a person. You're saying, no, I want it this way, or no, I want it that way. But you don't realize how important that is, because what you're doing is you're forming the AI into what your workflow will be, right? How you do the work and how you see the world. And that's going to have higher efficacy. It's going to have higher benefit.
Yeah.
But you're going to hit that wall where you're saying, all right, you're going to start saying, oh, shoot, now I need not only the documents and the prompting, all the things we just talked about, but now to your point, okay, now I need to integrate it. Okay, I need to have this thing talk to my CRM, or I need to have this thing post a note on my support dashboard.
It needs to be a user of this stuff.
I need to work. I need to have access to systems, right? It can only do so much. It needs to grab this file or grab that file. And so obviously an integration component requires a platform and requires a more enterprise ready product, but at least where you need to integrate, right? You're like, okay, in this point in my process, I would usually ask the AI, it's going to ask me to upload the latest, report, the latest financials or whatever, the latest timesheet or whatever it might be from Friday. Well, that's usually on a OneDrive. So how can I get it to grab that, right?
So it's less of the AI suggesting work that it needs or resources it needs and just doing it.
Yeah,
that's
like
really
autonomous.
The biggest piece there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, making the AI more autonomous, or at least giving it connectivity so it can actually grab that information. So it takes the human less work and less oversight. Now you're still going to have humans in the loop. You're still going to have areas where the humans are going to either provide oversight, feedback, or they're going to have to, click yes, no, continue, approve, whatever it might be. But the more that you can make it autonomous, obviously, the better scale you get out of it. And the second thing, which is very important, is that, for the most part, 99% of the engagement that we've been talking about around AI and what most people experience is this kind of new UI experience that ChatGPT introduced, right? Google Gemini, it's like a chat interface, right? It's a very simple, elegant interface where it has all your conversations on the left and has the current conversation in the middle, and has a couple little cool tools. But it's it's kind of the new way of interfacing this, or understanding how to interface the ChatGPT, right? The UX, which has been standardized by hundreds of millions of people using that.
Right. Fully adopted. We're in it. Yeah.
But when you really talk about, an agent, again, back to the point about untethering it from that experience, you want to open up other communication channels too, right? So this is where an agent would also blossom, where ChatGPT would stop, which is in things like, hey, I wanted to send emails. I want to receive emails, text messages. I wanted to make calls. I want to receive calls. I wanted to be able to connect to my systems. All of these things, I want to live publicly on my website as a live chat to do support. So all the communication channels, the integration, you can start to understand why there's a big difference between deploying an AI agent and basically, kind of building out these kind of the first tier using ChatGPT or advanced prompting or GPTs themselves. but there is a parallel, and there certainly is an evolution. So it's not either or, it's in a weird way kind of both, right? You're going to live in ChatGPT. That's the world that you, as a point of view user, single user interface, you're going to get a lot of benefit out of that tool. And then every once in a while, you might stumble on something or build something. You're like, man, I really would love to make this into an agent. And then you go to a platform like ours, import the prompt, upload the documents, hand it off to IT to connect the dots as far as integration, and then turn on some skills for sending SMSs, emails, or whatever you need to do. And you get a zero code environment like that, you can go live with an agent relatively fast. And because a lot of the heavy lifting is transforming the business user, the stakeholder, the person who knows that role or that task or how that workflow works, putting that into the agent. That's where most of the heavy lifting lives, you know.
And you hit on something too, and I'm going to take it just a step further. I mean, not all prompts are created equal, right? So you get to this point where something that you really like, they go and, dev wastes all his time building, and then you find no one uses it, and you're like, oh, that was a waste. So like the fact that you can start off with something that is small, contained, experiment with, and then when other people go, oh, I would love to have something like that, like you said, you can accelerate that super fast when you have a clear understanding of what it takes to actually have it do the work.
Yeah, what's cool about it too is I know a lot of companies are out there kind of going, oh, we got to get an AI, we got to do AI, we got to run some direction. They're all running different directions, and they're buying these off the shelf products that suck. They're buying embedded AI into existing SaaS systems which suck. And everybody's disappointed with it, right? For the most part, outside of the ChatGPT experience, right?
We heard 5 different people on the Zendesk side that were just I've been having my Zendesk rep ask me for a year to just give it one more shot, and it's like that's not a path you want to be on.
Because it's not really an AI first. It's just like a fancy search engine that they try to throw. They slap the AI onto it. I think it's.
I just figured since we usually dunk on Salesforce,
I read a tweet or something on LinkedIn. Somebody called it AI. They had a great terminology for it. Was like basically faking that you have AI. It's like it's like an AI. It's like basically saying it, just adding the word AI to it, but it's not really. It's like fake. Anyway, I forgot the term. That's how great it was. But anyway, long story short,
it really made a lasting impression on you. Just enough.
I think it was like AI slopping, but that doesn't make sense. But the point is, it's disgusting.
That sounds disgusting, though.
But the point is that when you think about deploying AI. Just for the sake of AI, you're probably going to have a 1 out of 10 shot at winning. But if you're letting your employees kind of experiment and look at and play around and do these kind of prompting and GPTs, and maybe even give them courses and training to understand how to become and build these more advanced prompts, because a lot of times when people hear prompt, they hear, oh, it's just a Google search. No, prompt is like very robust instructions that are very scalable. And you're basically giving very clear workflow engineering-esque type.
People can absolutely use ChatGPT as a search engine.
Sure.
Though. I think that's where we all are getting more comfortable doing. But you're exactly right that they think that that's prompt engineering. Be like, oh, I'm just asking these questions. Like, no, at this point, you're defining clear results that you're trying to accomplish in the conversation you're having. And that's where it becomes a prompt and not just a call and response. Yeah,
in fact, I would say anytime you have a long conversation with ChatGPT and you go, that was really helpful. That was something that I might want to do again. And at the last thing you should ask ChatGPT is say, like, hey, look at our entire conversation I just had with you, and please build me a prompt that I can reuse in the future. And you could either save that, or you could put it as elevate it as a prompt inside of a project or a GPT, and then eventually obviously make its way to an agent if it makes sense.
A prompt inside of a prompt inside of a prompt. It's promptception.
But what's great is that was a good joke.
Appreciate it. I didn't think it was good at all, so I'm glad you liked it.
No, it's a good joke because it's like, it's Keach, whatever. So the point is like, if you can get your people thinking about solving problems, right? Not having a solution for, looking for a problem, but having like real driven, user-based driven kind of, I want this, then it starts to bubble up to management and to IT and says, okay, hey, we got like 6 use cases here. These guys are already doing it. It's giving they're giving them lift, and it's really working out, right? Like, and so now we just have to agentify it. Makes sense, right? Like that's how I would approach rolling out stuff, is push it down to the edge, get people working on AI in that way where it's hyper comfortable. Also, by the way, they're going to fall in love with it because most people do. Yep. And then they go, oh man, if this could connect to this product, or if this connect to our system here, and if you could grab documents here, and we could add this, this, and this, and this, man, this would be something that everybody in our department would use.
Yeah.
And if you hear that, then all I hear is like, cha-ching, right? Because you're saving money, you're compressing time, you're getting what AI promises, which is you're getting more productivity and a happier and more productive workforce.
Yeah, I think a good analogy when it comes to the path of prompt to like full employee, right, might be your initial experience. It's in like an intern stage. Like you're asking it to help you with your job and giving it some basic things inside of a prompt, and it's being able to help you accelerate slightly. Then you kind of move to an employee, right? Something that is actually working side by side with you. And at some point, for a lot of our clients, like they get to this level of where it's actually a team member that you can actually trust to run a department. Maybe not at the full scale, like inside of a business saying like, oh, I don't even do marketing anymore. That's all AI. Not to say it couldn't get there, but I do think there's this level of trust that starts to come in the more you see the value. And then again, the more it's integrated into your day to day, it gets to the point where I really don't need to check in on it anymore. There's still oversight. I still want to know what it's doing, but I don't need to be in there, nitpicking every single thing it's doing, because it's shown me time and time again that it's just as effective, if not more effective, than the employees that used to do those low value tasks. So I'd rather just let it handle it and then inform me if there's a problem that I need to address.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just the new frontier on how people need to think about motivating their employees to find ways to use tools as kind of a pilot beta test, not only to get them excited about using AI to get to optimize their 5x their time, but then eventually that when it actually does work and you have that Friday meeting and you ask so and so in support, how's that going? And they go, man, that's great, it's going great, but we'd love to see this as an agent. Then it kind of percolates up, and then now you have this kind of nice little factory happening, right? You have everybody kind of looking for use cases that could be very nuanced and could be very specific, and that's one of the challenges. It's not like you don't just say, I'm going to build a support agent and that's all you build, right? You're going to say, well, I want an agent that, it's in the support department, but it looks at a ticket and does this and does this and does this, which is very different than tier one, or very different than analyzing knowledge base articles or writing knowledge base articles. So there might be 30 support agents that live under support, but it requires the people who are actually doing the task to actually model those out and then hand over to IT or the CTO or CIO or the manager or whoever it is and say, hey man, let's agentify this. So, because we'll get a lot more scale if we share this amongst the entire team. And especially if it's autonomous, if it does it on its own, man, we just saved 30, 40 hours a week. And now that's what the manager, that's what a CEO wants to hear. Right. Yeah.
And that's the key, right? It's not that everyone's going in 100 different directions. Now they're kind of going through their work with a fine-tooth comb saying, what are the parts that I don't want to do, versus, hey, you guys just go out and find something, and then ever again goes out and there's overflow, or people are looking at the same things but in different services. Like it just becomes, that's where you're going to lose money, is just not having direction. The minute you have direction, have everyone get involved and say like, all right guys, let's do a once a month meeting, once a week meeting in the early days of like, let's find 2, 3, 4, 5 things that we could have AI doing for us, and then determine what is the lowest hanging fruit that's going to give us the maximum value. And then what's second on the list, third on the list. Because from there, you now have potentially 5 employees that you could bring in for less of the cost than 1 FTE.
Yeah.
And everyone on that team and everyone in the company is going to get value from it. So it's huge.
Right. And you put the work on them, because that's another component, right? If they're willing to do the work and they're willing to take whatever activity they're trying to automate or bring in and agentify, the fact that they put the time in and the energy and to build the prompt and to, then they're invested in making it work, right? Because another component of AI is adoption, right? You don't just, if you're going to build something, you shove it down, top down, the people are like, I don't know. They don't know what to do with it. They don't understand how to use it. And so if you actually have them kind of create at least the framework of what they want, and they can see it work and they've invested in it, then if there's ownership there. And I think that's what's so unique and different about deploying AI than, like, for example, going out and buying a software product or thinking of any other sort of tech implementation. This is a very nuanced, a very customized, it's a very personal element that you're adding to your business. And so it should be treated in that manner, right? You'd have to get business stakeholder buy-in. You have to really, really help give them the agency and capability to be part of the process. It's not coming from IT. Certainly IT should be involved in maybe helping guide and pick what tools that they want to authorize. But once you get the tools in the place, or once people start using those things to innovate and build, that's going to be your quickest path to ROI.
Yep. 100%, man. Well, for everyone listening, thanks again for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check out our Substack for more content, which will be linked to this episode to continue this discussion. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.